This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this our final session of the Emory University's 2014 India Summit, we are privileged to have with us today to address us our keynote speaker, Ambassador Ajit Kumar. He is the Consul General of India in Atlanta and the official Indian representative for the entire southeastern portion of the United States. When Ambassador Kumar arrived here 2.5 years ago to establish the Consulate General, he gave reality to the dream that many of us had had for years. Since he has been here, he has acquired and furnished the lovely Consulate General, and I'm sure some of you have been there, as well as the splendid official residence that he and his wife occupy. He has recruited and staffed an office to handle the consular needs of the Indian community here in the southeastern portion of the United States, and to deal with visa issues and other requests by U.S. citizens. He has assisted private and public sector officials in their endeavors to expand cooperation with and in India. He has represented his government with his presence and his eloquent words across the entire consular district, and he has advised his government in New Delhi and his embassy in Washington about the political, economic, and other developments in this part of our nation. Indeed, his achievements over the past 30 or so months, not years, months, have been extraordinary, and he has been wonderfully assisted by his delightful wife, Margaret. Ambassador Kumar has been especially helpful to Emory University. He has often spoken on our campus. He's participated as guest lecturer in many of our classes. He has intervened to help Emory faculty and students travel, study, and research in India. And he has played an invaluable role in helping to organize and execute not only this India Summit, but the others before it. As many of you know, India's new ambassador to the United States, the Honorable S. Jaishankar, had hoped to be with us. Unfortunately, his official duties required that he be present in Washington today, and so he asked Ambassador Kumar to speak in his stead, and we're delighted that he's agreed to do so. Now, I know you came here to hear Ambassador Kumar and not me, but I would be remiss if I did not say something about the brilliant career he has had. Prior to this assignment, Ajit served in a variety of senior positions for his government, as Consul General in Germany, as ambassador in Zimbabwe, and as additional secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in New Delhi. Earlier foreign postings include Syria, Mexico, and Pakistan. A proven negotiator both on the multilateral side as well as the bilateral side, Ambassador Kumar played an important role in his country's efforts in the United Nations and elsewhere to prevent the proliferation of nuclear and chemical weapons. Last year, Ambassador Kumar was promoted to Senior Ambassador Grade 1 in the Indian Foreign Service, which is the equivalent of Secretary to the Indian government, which is the highest position a career diplomat can aspire to. So clearly, when his government decided to send Ambassador Kumar to us, it chose among its very best, and we're all grateful for that. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Emory University, it is an honor to introduce to you a professional diplomat whom I greatly admire, and a person I'm privileged to call a friend, Ajit Kumar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see my dear friends. Well, first of all, Mariam, thank you for a very kind introduction. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate Emory University for successfully hosting the 5th India Summit. I'm very grateful to all the organizers and, past and present, past Professor Holly Smetko, present Mr. Philip Wainwright, and all the student body, and of course, so many of his colleagues who are here. Today I'm going to speak on, and it's really an honor and privilege to come back to Emory again and again, and I'd like to speak on emerging India and India's bilateral strategic relations with the United States. And I would also like to mention about that fact that India just celebrated its 65th Republic Day recently, last month, on 26th of January. And we are also going to hold the world's largest organized activity in human history, the 16th general elections in India this year, probably in April or May. So let me share with you at this juncture the large strides taken by India in the 65 years of its republic, and of course we have many miles to go to join the ranks of advanced nations, but I think we have also come a long way. First of all, one of the major achievements of India since independence, which we got in 1947, is our evolution as the world's largest democracy. And with 1.12 billion people, it can be very noisy, but I can promise you it can be very vibrant also at times. And there is no precedent in human history of a democracy with 1 billion people. So this is an achievement in itself. But what is more important is, given India's complexity, its diversity, we do believe in unity and diversity. And therefore, India's pluralism and its ability to manage it could be a big lesson to others, especially in Asia today, in West Asia in particular. Secondly, the last decade has witnessed the emergence of India as one of the fastest growing economies. We are today the third largest economy based on the purchasing power basis. Our average GDP growth in last decade has been about 7.9%. And while we have been impacted by the global slowdown, we have weathered the storm not badly, because our GDP in 2008 was about 6.9%, and this year it has come down to 5%, but according to the World Bank, it will again increase to 6 to 7% next year onwards. Also, this year the fiscal deficit is declining, the current account deficit has been contained, inflation has moderated, and quarterly growth is on rise. The exchange rate is stable. Our exports have risen to $326 billion, and hundreds of projects have been unblocked of nearly $100 billion. In fact, India's Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, yesterday, presenting his interim budget, stated that there is a well-argued view that in the next 3 decades, India's GDP will take the country to the 3rd rank after USA and China. He offered a 10-point agenda to achieve the target. Fortunately, our economic fundamentals remain strong. Even after the slowdown, the savings and the investment rates are still over 30%. Thirdly, India is an ancient civilization but a young nation. India has nearly 50% of this population below the age of 25, as one of the lowest average for its working population. That's one thing is sure, that we won't have labor shortages in future. And this is one of India's biggest strength and enormous source of dynamism for years to come. In fact, President of India in his message to the Republic Day said that our biggest assets are human. We are trying to reap this demographic dividend by imparting better education, by opening many more colleges and imparting quality education, and also we have started a huge program for 50 million youth in the next 5 years for the skill development, which is ongoing. Also, friends, our large and expanding middle class of nearly 300 million not only provides the skilled manpower for a wide range of scientific, technological, and managerial fields, but also provides a huge and consumer market which is emerging as one of the world's largest. And that has also resulted in India becoming one of the biggest investment destinations. It's good to learn that Atlanta-based Coca-Cola last year, when its CEO Mukhtar Kent went to India, announced an investment of $5 billion, which was very good because it enabled its friendly beverage company, Pepsi Cola, when its CEO Indira Nooni went to India, to also announce a $5 billion investment in India. And thanks to the Green Revolution, there is another important point about India which is not often mentioned, is that thanks to the Green Revolution, for which we are also very grateful to Dr. Norman Borlaug. He was a US Nobel laureate, and he, in fact, had the distinction of once giving him a visa on Independence Day of India. I think that was the only exception we made because, he was the father of the Green Revolution in India. And he asked for a visa on Independence Day. I had to open my office and give him the visa, the least we could do for him. Today, thanks to the Green Revolution, we are one of the biggest food producers in the world. Today, we are the largest exporters of rice in the world and second largest exporter of wheat. But what we need in India today is a second green revolution, better food distribution, and of course, a better food processing industry so that our wastage of food, which is of massive amounts, could be stopped. In the field of science and technology, we have also made advances, especially in the field of information technology. We are already a IT power thanks to the mathematical and analytical skills of the young Indians who have made their presence felt in advanced countries, especially in America and Silicon Valley, and of course in Georgia also. Another feather in cap in India in this field of science and technology is that India has joined a handful of countries when it launched its Mars orbiter mission. We now have the capability for in-launch vehicle technology, cryogenics and navigation, meteorological and communication satellites, and we are largely self-reliant. In fact, we can send satellites in what we call in the most cost-effective manner. That will become quite a competitor in the world in this field also. And this year, several flights, tests, navigational satellites, and space missions are also planned. Another thing which has happened in India, which is quite significant, is the telecom revolution. When we were young, it took a lot of time to get a landline, but now we have more than 900 million mobile phone users, and it is one of the biggest markets. And of course, the result of that is it's one of the cheapest in the world, the rates out there, because the competition out there. And this has enabled better connectivity in India and better productivity also. Another area where I think there are two things Indians are very fond of. One of them is a game called cricket, which may not sound much familiar to you. It sounds a bit like baseball. But the other thing which they are very much interested in is the movies. And India continues to be the largest producers of movies in the world. And Indian movies are quite popular in many parts of the world. And this we call as an extension of India's soft power, because today India's culture, cuisine, and of course cinema, and now of course yoga also is becoming well known in USA. Last year, Indian cinema celebrated 100 years of its existence, and it's very appropriate that this year, on 24th to 26th of April, the International Film Academy Awards would be held in Tampa, Florida, which I know many Indian Americans in Atlanta would be visiting to see this award ceremonies. Last but not the least, I would like to mention about another achievement in the health sector, and that has been eradication of polio for the last 3 years. I know this has been a topic of discussion in this panel discussion in this summit. But we must give due credit to the millions of government officials, doctors, and health workers who made it possible. This is indeed a monumental achievement. We are also very grateful for USA for this collaboration. However, several more challenges remain in our battle with tuberculosis, diabetes, and we have concerns over several public health issues where we are also trying our best to tackle them. Now, friends, now let me come to the Indian general elections. The statistics of today's Indian elections may be mind-boggling if you look just at the numbers. There are around 800 million electors on the electoral roll of India as of January 14, which is more than the population of both North and South American continents taken together, or all the countries of Europe or of Africa combined. I say this because I've mentioned these figures on my Republic Day, and one of my friends told me, "Oh, you have 800,000 electorate." I said, "No, it's about 800 million." So he was quite shocked. So I just thought I'll explain this a little bit so that it sinks in that how great an exercise this is in itself. And the last elections to the Indian Parliament held in 2009 can be described as the biggest humanly managed event in the world. It involved 714 million voters, 835,000 polling stations, 1.18 million electronic voting machines, and 11 million personnel, which includes the paramilitary forces for security and, of course, the much maligned bureaucracy, the teachers and others who really help in this process. Regardless of the outcome of the elections, which I know many of you would ask this question, but it will again demonstrate to the world the strength of our democracy and our institutions and the enduring nature of these ideals that constitute the bedrock of our nation's progress. And I say this because I remember when we had Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee as our Prime Minister, and he lost the elections. I mean, the results were coming and the writing was on the wall. And he went to the President of India and submitted his resignation, mainly because he knew that he's going to lose the elections, but he said that I have lost, but the people of India have won. So there is an abiding faith in democracy, and we are doing it every year, every 5 years. We have held the Election Commission of India has held 15 general elections since the 1950s, and also held 350 state elections. And it's a gigantic task in itself. And this year's election is going to be particularly interesting because, our President of India in his message to the Republic Day had cautioned that a fractured government hostage to whimsical opportunists is always an unhappy eventuality. In 2014, it could be catastrophic. He called on the voters to vote responsibly. And of course, this will be held in April, May, most probably in May this year, and we all, like you, also wait for the election results. Now, let me come down to the main issue main subject of my talk, that is the India-US bilateral strategic relations. President Obama had characterized India-US relationship as one of the defining partnerships of the 21st century. And last September, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh paid a visit to the White House for an official visit. And this was the third summit of Prime Minister Singh with President Obama. And this, if you see the joint statement of the result of the visit of Prime Minister of India to Washington last September, it's a testimony to the fact that how our bilateral cooperation is very broad-based and multi-sectoral, and now people-to-people interaction provide further vitality and strength to bilateral relationship. Bilateral partnership enjoys bipartisan support in both our countries, and India caucus remains one of the biggest in the US Congress. Last month, our new ambassador to United States, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, spoke at I think Carnegie Endowment, and he listed the three key drivers of our ties today with USA. First and foremost is our geostrategic and political convergence, something that could only manifest itself after the Cold War. The second is our intersecting economic interests. These are the consequence of higher economic growth rates as well as the broader rise of Asia. Third is a mix of our shared values and societal contacts. These reflect the expanding Indian American community and the growing middle class in India. Each one of these factors evolved over a time, but their coming together has created a basis for the current phase of our ties. It is not that if all this happened on its own. On the contrary, the new level of our relationship was animated by the strategic vision in both nations. Prime Minister Singh only recently singled out coming together of the two countries in the form of the civilian nuclear agreement as the best moment of his whole tenure. This vision became reality due to the commitment and diligence on the part of many on both sides. Our relations politically also, I think, are at a level where we feel very comfortable, and there are regular interactions at the highest levels of the government, from the legislature to bureaucracy. We see a frequency, intensity, and candor of contacts that speak for themselves. Our dialogues have moved well beyond orthodox stock taking of bilateral issues and an exchange of views on global ones. We are now talking of defense cooperation, counter-terrorism, and homeland security with as much ease as we are talking about energy, education, or health. That we discussed East Asia regularly reflects our confidence levels as much as our doing trilateral dialogues with Japan and with Afghanistan. Our economic interactions have undergone a similar transformation. A great sectoral focus and engagement on specific policies and regulations underline that is for real. Where civil society is concerned, the physical flow of people has been magnified by virtual communications. There is truly cause for satisfaction about the level our ties have reached. Now let me briefly mention about one of the points I mentioned about geostrategic convergence, and this is one of the core of our relationship. How India's lookist policy meets the United States rebalancing in Asia will have a significance beyond our individual interests. In addressing that and other pressing challenges, we would serve each other's interests best by being ourselves. After all, India and the United States do have a common commitment to a peaceful, pluralistic, and progressive world. And no one should dispute that as a liberal democratic society, India's rise poses no challenge to American values. Now let me mention about trade and economic relations, which is one of the central figures of our expanding bilateral relations. The annual two-way trade in goods and services have risen to $100 billion in the last 7 years, while the two-way foreign direct investment have crossed $50 billion. India is now among the fastest growing source of foreign direct investment in the US. In fact, not enough credit has been given to the investments that Indian companies have made here since 2008. A recent study of 68 companies revealed that their collective investments in the US exceed $17 billion. And one of the major investments by Indian companies, for example, Aditya Birla's group, Hindalco company, is in Atlanta when they bought Novelis for $6 billion, and then they also acquired another chemical company which is now Birla Carbon. And 1/3 of these Indian companies are actively engaged in R&D, spending about $350 million in that respect. And in fact, Novelis again has opened an R&D facility in Marietta where 250 people are engaged. Therefore, recently when there's US-India Business Council met and invited our ambassador for a meeting, its chairman Ajay Banga, who is the chairman of US-India Business Council and CEO of MasterCard, he said, and I quote, "The potential to reach 500 billion in two-way trade by 2020 is an achievable goal if we work together in partnership in an environment that provides predictability, consistency, and transparency, unquote. Also, one of the other promising areas is the defense sector, which I'll repeat that what once Ambassador Blackwell, United States Ambassador in India a few years back, said it was flat as a chapati. But now the chapati has become what you call in India puri or something, so that it has really risen so fast that India today is second only to the United States Air Force in its fleet of C-17 Globemaster heavy lift aircraft. The Indian Navy has introduced P-8 Poseidon maritime surveillance aircraft at the same time as did the US Navy. We have just cleared an additional order of C-130J Super Hercules aircraft, which incidentally is also made in Lockheed Martin plant in Marietta, just outside Atlanta. And we found that the Indian aircraft orders alone support 40,000 jobs in US defense industry. And unlike many recipients of American military hardware, India actually paid $9 billion for these acquisitions. Nor does India has ever given cause for technology protection concerns. It is also encouraging that in India, specific acquisition and co-production template is now under development in the Pentagon. The rest of defense relationship is doing well too. The US is the country with which our armed forces conduct the maximum number of exercises. This year, India would be a full participant in the RIMPAC exercises for the first time. Deploying naval assets in that regard, our policy dialogues and military exchanges have also grown in their frequency and comfort level. And now I come to my favorite topic, that is the Indian American community. Now, more than 3 million strong Indian American community, which includes now a large number of professionals, educationists, and entrepreneurs, have been increasing its sphere of influence both in the economic and political field. And there are in fact 2 Indian Americans who are occupying high-level posts of governor, a congressman, and several representatives of state legislatures. And in the federal administration, I think for the first time in Obama administration, the Indian Americans are in sizable numbers, including in USAID, and now I hope the new US Surgeon General is also confirmed. And also there are in business field, there are CEOs like Indra Neoni of Pepsi Cola, and then of course the recent addition of Satya Nadella as CEO of Microsoft. Therefore, the community has assimilated into the adopted country and is acting as a catalyst to forge closer and stronger ties between India and US. They remain the best ambassadors of India. Today, US remains also a preferred destination for Indian students for higher education. I can see some of them here, and we have over 100,000 Indian students from India benefiting from the higher education in USA. And of course, they pay $3 billion as fees. And more than 17,000 American and Indian students and scholars have benefited through programs such as Nehru Fulbright scholarships and Khurana scholarships. Since I'm at Emory University, let me also mention one other factor which is important between India and United States is about the higher education and dialogue, and this is one of the important pillars of our strategic relations. And this is promoting strategic institutional partnerships, deepening collaboration in research and development, fostering partnerships in community college education, junior faculty development, and empowered classrooms through online education. 16 joint India-US research projects have been awarded under the Singh Obama 21st Century Initiative. Considering India's demographic dividend of young people, our cooperation in higher education is critically important pillar of strategic partnership, as I mentioned. In the field of health, Vaccine Action Program is a productive collaboration, and the momentum it has seen the development of new rotavirus vaccine, that is Rotavac. We also have close cooperation for Center for Disease Control, CDC, based in Atlanta in 14 projects. In fact, CDC assisted in the establishment of the Global Disease Detection Center in India. And here I would like to mention the contribution of Emory University, which is working with Public Health Foundation of India, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and Madras Diabetes Research Foundation to study diabetes and heart disease under the leadership of Dr. K. M. Venkatanarayan, and I'm happy to see he is here. They have also set up trials to improve diabetes care in 9 clinics in India to treat people with diabetes and depression. Training programs run by Emory University is also benefiting some Indians who are trained here annually. So friends, in fact, to realize India's 4 key priorities, that is, energizing the economy, raising our technology and management capabilities, securing the homeland, and ensuring a favorable balance of power, the US is the indispensable partner. Secondly, these big Indian goals are not at odds with the interests of the United States. In fact, these could be even complementary. Since the economy is so central to India-US ties, India's interests warrant supporting an early American recovery. A fair dialogue should also take into account India's priorities and concerns. Therefore, the big issues and bilateral ties between India and USA no longer exist. India and US have moved beyond the times when they were not on the same page. But India-US ties can neither afford dilution or attention nor weakening of faith. The India-US relationship has thus arrived, as some would say. Therefore, the grand strategy underwriting our ties fundamentally is sound. It needs maintenance from time to time, an upgrade that puts the emphasis on detailing and problem solving. That doesn't mean that among friends we don't have differences. The whole issue of diplomatic relationship or relationship between the world's largest democracy and the world's oldest democracy has not been easy. But we have traveled a long way, and there are issues which we need to sort out with the dialogue. The recent exchange we had at the highest level was in last month on January 22, when India's External Affairs Minister, Mr. Sulman Khurshid, met with Secretary of State John Kerry at Montreux in Switzerland on the sidelines of the Syria conference. And they reviewed the recent developments in India-US relations and agreed that the bilateral relations were very important for both countries and looked forward for the early realization of the mutually agreed calendar of bilateral exchanges, including some important bilateral visits, and also discussed defense cooperation between India and USA. In view of the recent episode involving the arrest of an Indian diplomat in New York, External Affairs Minister and the Secretary of State recognized the need to put in place institutional arrangements to look at all our outstanding issues relating to the privileges and immunities of diplomats of both countries so that such issues could be resolved in a timely manner. External Affairs Minister also underlined India's concern over trafficking visas issued to Indian nationals by the US Embassy in India. The two ministers agreed to remain in contact to follow up on the progress of these issues. Therefore, to conclude, India and US bilateral relations have developed into a global strategic partnership based on increasing convergence of interests on bilateral, regional, and global issues. It is essential that we continue our engagement at all levels. And ladies and gentlemen, this is my final point here, because India-US partnership is really in our respective national interests. For India, our relationship with US is of great priority and importance in the 21st century. Thank you very much for listening to.
Ambassador Kumar has agreed to take your questions, and if you'll let us know who would like to ask a question, the mic will come up to record that. So are there questions? Okay, we'll go to Jay first.
My question is regarding your last point, that Indian diplomat thing. With the background that I've been here for a long time, and I've been very pleased to see since at least 1990s improved relations between US and India. through Clinton, Bush, and Obama administration, but for this recent incident. My question is this: it looks like it was all about how much that maid was paid. Pay was the issue. But I looked at it, looking at it here in uh, New York rates and all that approximately. I don't think she was paid very low. If you take into account all the perks, boarding and lodging and utilities and all that. So in anything, when there are two units, two systems, and you are comparing, whether it is engineering or medical or language, you decide which unit to convert and compare. So why didn't they just decide what are the elements of each compensation package and then convert it into New York rates? And according to me, and I may be slightly wrong, instead of $9.75 minimum wage for New York, it would come in her case close to $40 if you include boarding, lodging, utilities, transportation, medical, and all that. And I don't know whether my question to you is, why the Indian government's public relations department don't clarify this? I think Americans will understand that.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much for a very detailed question. I would only say that, you see, the whole issue relates to immunity, whole issue relates to privileges, and we are having dialogue with Americans. Because, in diplomacy, reciprocity is everything about in USA and in India. So we are talking to them about these issues, and as I mentioned, our ministers also met, our ambassador has also met with the State Department people, and we are, I would suggest that we leave it to the experts in Delhi and Washington. They are quite capable of handling these issues. I think what happened shouldn't have happened, could have been avoided with better sensitivity and other things, but now that it has happened, we need to solve it. And that's what our government, both governments are engaged in to ensure that these issues of privileges and immunities are resolved, because obviously there is a different interpretation on both sides. So we have to reconcile to that there is equality in that privileges and immunities, and that's what we are talking about. So hopefully we'll be able to come to a reasonable solution. Yes, sir.
Could you speak to how democracy has evolved over the past 65 years in India, and how is the 15th election different than the first election?
Of course, it has evolved quite a lot. I mean, from a baby it is becoming an adult, in the sense that if you see just the size of the electorate, the election in 1951, our first general elections, and this year, it's the enormity of the scope, as I mentioned, the nearly 800 million voters now, the kind of security we put in, the kind of innovation we put in for the electronic voting machines. Because those days you could use paper. Now, for 800 million people, if you use paper, you will destroy a lot of forests. So you have to be innovative, you have to be creative to ensure that these elections are held in a free and fair manner, so that every citizen of India who is on the electoral rolls gets his or her franchise to cast. So this is evolution, and also it shows the evolution of India as the world's largest democracy, because unless you have elections which are free and fair, then only you can elect responsible governments. So we have come a long way. We have still not reached a place where we can say that everything is fine, but yes, we are there. We in fact today we have an institute of parliamentary training and democracy, where we are giving We have trained hundreds of people from the developing world to come and train so that elections and democracy, parliamentary procedures, how they are done. So we are trying to share our expertise with others also. So it is really sea change from the early elections to what we are today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Consul General. My question is to one of the points that you made about the strategic relationship between US and India, and also how one of the key assets of India is the human potential that we can tap into. So from that standpoint, and also higher education and all of that umbrella, how do you see entrepreneurship really playing out in that sphere? Because there's a lot of technological advancements and partnerships that are happening on the scientific R&D side. So how do you develop or tap into this massive young population of India who can really use this, leverage this technology to kind of become more entrepreneurial or free thinkers or innovative thinkers to create much greater things? So I'd like to know if there's any government mandate around it, or when you are talking to the US counterparts, there are discussions around this topic and things like that. I would love your comments on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, there is a government mandate. In fact, last year we had declared Government of India as an innovation decade, and we realized that the entrepreneurial skill is very important, and that is why the large number of people, nearly 500 million, which we have, more than the population of the United States, the young people, we have to impart skill development, and that is why I had mentioned a massive program which we are having for about 50 million people for the next 5 years. We are trying to impart skill development in that. That has already started and will continue for the next 5 years. We also have institutional arrangement with the United States in these fields, both in innovation and entrepreneurship. And there we have regular business and otherwise dialogue with them. And I can provide you later details of this, but there is an ongoing collaboration on this field also, because we realize that one of the most important things which United States has is the advanced technology, and many of our young people here, also the Indian Americans, are doing quite well. So we like to share collaboration. In fact, it's already going on in many ways in the information technology field. But you are right, we need to do it in a more concrete and focused way, and which we are trying for that.
Yes, back here, please. I think they want to get it on tape.
Ambassador, I just wondered, what is your and your family's favorite thing about living in the South?
That's the best question. Is one of them. The best is the Southern hospitality. I think it's a real pleasure for me and my family to come here and enjoy the Southern hospitality, which I had heard about, never enjoyed it. So I'm really enjoying that, and I think with all due regard to people from other parts of the United States, I've been to a few parts where when I was in Geneva, I used to come to for United Nations conferences, stay for a few months and all that. And the one thing which struck me in South was the people were better mannered, they were much more nicer to you, in every sense of the term, I mean, than I found any other people of United States in any other parts which I had been. Welcome.
Joyce? Mike's right there.
Hi, I have two questions, and,
अरे आप क्यों पूछती हैं भाई? अच्छा बताइए.
and you may answer whichever one you want. One of them is about the issue of Telangana and what the central government's role. I think it's happening right now, and so just to talk a little bit about what you think the future of that state might be. The other one is closer to home and came up yesterday when Salman Rushdie was talking. And I'm sure you're aware, and most people in the audience are aware of Wendy Doniger's book, The Hindus Being Banned in India and Pulped. Now, I realize India Penguin is a private institution, and they're the ones that are dealing with the law, but what you think the state of that law that they were responding to is and might be changed, and whether you think academic freedom is at stake in India, really.
You're only asking loaded questions. About the first question on Telangana, you see, normally people here in US think that I'm a politician, because most of the ambassadors of US are politicians, which I'm not. It's a different matter. My younger brother was member of parliament. My father was also a member of parliament. That's a different matter. But I'm not a politician. I'm a professional diplomat. So I just wanted to clarify that before answering. So it's better to be answered by a politician. But it's evolution of democratic process in India. States in 1956 were formed on linguistic basis. We have evolved. There have been states, for example, Bihar was divided into Jharkhand and Bihar. There was no hue and cry so much, even though then the then Chief Minister, Mr. Lalu Yadav, said, "Over my dead body," but he's still living. And politicians make these statements. And then we had the division of, earlier division of Punjab and Haryana and all that, and later division of course, Uttar Pradesh into Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand and all that, which were by and large peaceful, because these states, frankly speaking, Uttar Pradesh can still be divided, and in Bundelkhand and others. So that way, I think it is a process, and we have to go through the constitutional mechanism. The Parliament has just today passed the bill of Telangana in the Lok Sabha, so I hope it goes through Rajya Sabha. So obviously there is a lot of emotional quotient involved. People a lot. So there is. I saw on television that there's Simandra. There's people are enjoying. Other part they are not enjoying. There are some places they are having firecrackers. Some places they are not so happy. So you can't make everyone happy. But there's a part of process. But I think the process dragged down a bit, and that's why it has created a bit of bad blood. But I don't know. I don't want to comment more than that. I don't want to become a politician. And the second question I will just answer briefly, because it's the law of the land, and I mean, nobody has a right to hurt religious feelings of others. But I take your point that not one person or anyone has the right to usurp the Hindu monopoly, because there is no single God, there is no single book, there is no single pope. So there are different interpretations, and Hinduism does allow inside itself, as you know, a lot of debate and dialogue. And it was the Penguin India which went to the court. The criticism they have received that they should have gone to the higher court. So that's what I can comment at the moment, but if you meet me personally, I'll tell you my views about it.
Ambassador, I also have two questions to ask you.
Yes, sir.
Healthcare in India is very good, and certain surgeries and operations can be done for considerably less than they can be in the United States. And with the new Affordable Health Care Act, does India plan to advertise or let it be known that you can have certain things done in India for considerably less than you can in the United States? I mean, this new Health Care Act has very high deductibles for certain people, and premiums have increased, and you can have it done for out-of-pocket less than you can here in the United States if that be known. My other question to you is, Ambassador Creekmore alluded to your prior service in both Syria and Pakistan. Would you tell us, in your own personal way, what you think the United States can do to better its relationships with those two countries, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take your point about the healthcare system in India. We have many challenges, but we also, the medical tourism in India is flourishing. We can do a lot of things like bypass or knee surgeries and all that, for example, for 1/4 the cost. And there are a lot of foreigners who are coming all over the world to India, and it is a thriving business. You have what we call in India 5-star hospital hotels, where the patient is given a good treatment as 1/4 the cost in the West, and also they can go and view the Taj Mahal. So it's flourishing and it's doing well. Yes, we can advertise more and do much more. But what we need in India is also ourselves. Our challenges are huge, and we are trying to cope up with that, and government is grappling with that. Even though we have got our smallpox and latest the polio and all that, but we have many more challenges. But yes, we have because our doctors are so well trained and they treat thousands of patients on a daily basis. They can really perform miracles in the sense of surgeries and other operations, which at the nominal cost in the West. And we are ready to serve anyone who can come there and visit us and pay to us. We will serve them at cheaper cost and better service. And your second question, yes, very simple. With Pakistan, it's very simple. I've served there, I've enjoyed it. It was a challenging assignment. I was much younger, and Pakistan should, it's our neighbor. We wish them the best. We want India is doing well economically by and large, and we wish our neighbor the very best. They should also economically prosper. We also want to have trade with them, so that, but we want them to stop. I mean, we want export of goods, not export of terrorism. That is our biggest concern. And the AFPAC region is what you call the mother of all terrorist havens. So they need to get the act together themselves, and that is where US should talk to them to get their own house in order. About Syria, it's a very difficult situation. It's you have again got this into this Cold War kind of scenario, where Russia is one side, West is one side, and they are having the proxy war where many people are being killed. Unfortunately, the UN conference failed, and it's a tragedy of massive proportions, because I had been there. This was my first posting. I learned Arabic. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people, but it's unfortunate that the international community, because of this, the big boys can't agree. It's very difficult to resolve it, but I guess it will be protracted, and I don't see simple and easy and fast solution to it at the moment. You have to keep engaged with them. Either side has to get an upper hand, whether rebels, and at present, in fact, it is Assad who's getting an upper hand, which is sad.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
I saw that person, and I'll come to both of them.
Hello, Ambassador. You briefly touched upon this before with regard to improving food distribution in India. And I've heard that actually there's no reason for anyone in India to go hungry. Given that what is the government of India actually doing in terms of concretely improving the situation in terms of food distribution?
Yes, that's a very relevant question, because, as I've said, we are one of the largest producers of food in the world, but the distribution is not so good. That is why Government of India has passed a food security bill, so that nobody in India would go hungry. They would be given some amount of food grains to at least have decent living. So that is now the government policy. There's been a lot of people have criticized it, but it's but I think it has got a lot of merit in that it will reach the common man or the poor man, and they are using a new technology. They're having a new card called Aadhaar, through which it can be delivered directly to the person. So there is an effort to ensure that everybody gets food, and also the food distribution system is getting better and being streamlined.
Okay, we'll have the two more questions I saw. We'll go first to you, Peter, and then we'll go to the gentleman behind you.
Ambassador, thank you again for coming. So you alluded to the political convergence with India and United States, specifically for the hope of a more pluralistic and peaceful world and region. And so specifically in Afghanistan, and with talks of a bilateral security agreement and possible continued United States presence in Afghanistan, would India support continued United States presence in Afghanistan for a stable Afghanistan and therefore a more stable South Asian region?
Well, India has civilizational relations with Afghanistan, and we are, in fact, any country with which India is helping a lot as far as aid is concerned. We are giving aid of nearly $10 billion to a lot of countries around the world, including in Africa. But our biggest aid donation is in Afghanistan. That's about $2 billion. And it is mainly for the capacity building, not for arms and ammunition, because there are enough of them going around. But to train people, we train one of the largest element of our program is what we call Indian Technical Program, and we train thousands of Afghans in India, in various institutes in India, to have a better living for small-scale industry or some other trades. And we are also training officers, police officers and others. And we are building hospitals, power lines, which some of them have opened, some they are biggest, some of the roads. We want to give them some infrastructure to live in. And so we are engaged in that sense. In fact, the new parliament building of Afghanistan in Kabul is coming up with India's assistance. So we are there to assist them in any manner possible. But we cannot interfere in any country's internal affairs militarily, because we need the UN sanction, and that is why we didn't go into Iraq. As far as Americans are there, I think they have, in that part of the world, they have done a great service for Afghanistan and for their own country, because the main aim they went in for to stop the terrorism. Unfortunately, the Taliban is still there, and we have dialogue with Americans also in Afghanistan, and we are very clear that we have to fight terrorism in all its forms, including Taliban. So we are together with Americans to see that such elements who are creating problems in our neighborhood should be tackled, and we are working with them, and we are very concerned with post 2014. I mean, this year scenario where there is going to be a political, economic, and of course security transition in Afghanistan. So it's a big challenge, not only for US but for India also, because there are fringe elements who might turn against us also, and it's just in our neighborhood. In fact, we are the only, as one American friend of mine told me the other day, that you are the only beacon of hope in that troubled neighborhood. So we want our troubled neighborhood to improve, and US really helped in that process.
Last question.
Ambassador, thank you very much for being here, for being both diplomatic and truthful, which is sometimes hard to do. So I appreciate that. I just ask you for your candid guess, not prediction, just your guess. If there's a change in the government in India in the next elections, do you foresee a change in basic U.S.-India relationships, or do you think pretty much they will continue as they have in the past?
Well, it's, as I said, Indo-US relationship has now reached a maturity where it doesn't matter which government comes in. The very fact the momentum is there, we are talking of nearly on every issue. We are collaborating on nearly in every field of human endeavor, whether it's health, education, defense, you name it. Trade is flourishing. So in that sense, and there is always exchange of visits, whether it's congressmen going or our people. So there is, democracies. I think the relationship, it doesn't matter which government comes. I think there will be better relationship whichever comes in future from both sides, because it's in the interest, as I mentioned, it is in our national interest, and the very fact that we are democracies, we have problems, but I think we have more similarities of views, geopolitically and otherwise. So I think the relationship is on a course where it will only become stronger and it will be strengthened more.
Join me in expressing our appreciation.